they passed over the center. And then it became coarser, maybe every 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers away from outside of this. This is the inner 60 kilometers radius. And then for the reference profile, I can't remember, it's probably 5 or 6 SONs that I averaged together to make the environment. I know that some people at University of Wisconsin are also working on a warm core analysis using a different reference profiles, and I think they find similar results overall with 2 maxima. So this is another very nice study by Durden in 2013 in Monthly Weather Review. And what he did is he took existing observations from a number of NASA field campaigns over many years, and many of those observations had just never been analyzed or published. And so occasionally NASA would have high altitude planes dropping SONs into hurricanes, and so that Durden collected those and was able to publish analyses for I think maybe 9 different hurricanes, or and then also included some analyses from radiosondes that were released in the eyes of some hurricanes and typhoons. So this is an example of 3 storms that were sampled by the NASA ER2 plane. So that was also flying at about 20 kilometers. So these are perturbation temperatures versus pressure. There's in the study, which I encourage you to read, there's a number. There's several different figures with showing the results from different storms other than these, but here I'm just showing this figure because it shows, again, 2 storms with a clear mid-level maximum of about 600 to 650 millibars. And there's a wide variety of structures. In Hurricane George, you have a mid-level maximum at 650 millibars, and then this upper-level maximum, not really near the tropopause, it's at 400 kilometers. And then Hurricane Aaron kind of has a broad maximum, maybe at about 500 millibars. So that's also mid-levels, and then decreasing above. From these analyses, you can't tell if there's a structure at if there's a near tropopause maximum or not, because the tropopause would be up near 100 or 150 millibars above the height of this analysis. But the point is that there's a large variation in observed structure of the warm core, but there is evidence that mid-level maxima are relatively common. So I think, contrary to what we used to think from the studies in the mid-60s, that a mid-level maximum might be uncommon or anomalous, I think the evidence today for both simulations and observations is pretty clear that that this is a common feature. Not all the time, but it's fairly common.
I think the location of those sounding is quite sensitive for capturing the height and the strength of warm core in the middle troposphere.
That, like the radio location?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I certainly agree. So if you were to be off by maybe 20 kilometers, you could have. I think it'll bias the results because from the simulations, I think there's clear evidence.
Even in the case of Patricia, the Eyewall peak can be captured by only one top soundings. Here, yes.
You get maybe 1 or 2.
Oh,
So yeah.
2.
So Patricia was a very small storm. So Patricia had an RMW of about at this time of about 10 kilometers.
Only 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you really have to hit it just right, and that's very difficult from upper levels. And you can tell whether they were in the eye or not by like the wind speed on the sonde. But if you miss the eye and you hit somewhere in the Eyewall, and you looked at the thermal structure there, you could have a very different picture of the warm core structure. So, yeah, if you look at if you look away from the center, you have a broad region of warming, and so you would find that the maximum warming was up at 14, 15 kilometers, and you would entirely miss the mid-level maximum.
Yes. So I think it is a one of the reasons that mid-level warm core couldn't be captured for long years.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think the biggest reason is that there just weren't many observations above low levels, so we just only had those few studies from the 1960s, and then for a long time there was only satellite data, and the satellite analyses are the resolution is too coarse. So the horizontal resolution would be on the order of 50 kilometers, and if you imagine just smoothing out the center, you would end up with only resolving the eyewall or the outer structure of the warm core, which does have just an upper level maximum without a mid-level maximum, and so you would miss it from satellite. So I think that contributes. Yeah.
So is this from HDSS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are from the HDSS
So
sondes.
that's very densely deployed.
Yes,
This is-
every densely deployed, and you can see the density of the sondes. So like these are being dropped basically every 4 to 5 kilometers here in the inner core region. I don't have it in this talk, but I have like analyses of the wind speed too, and you can see the eyewall structure.
Excuse me, so in the right panel, there is a positive peak is located around 8 kilometer height. So
Yeah.
maybe out of the eyewall, but that is out of your research scope. But do you have any idea why that positive peak is there?
I don't, and I kind of suspect that that's maybe an artifact of something. I'm not sure I believe it's real, but I'm not completely sure why it would be there. It probably has something to do with the structure of the reference profile, actually. That maybe somehow there's a variation in the vertical there and a local
Local
something in the reference. Yeah, I'd have to look more carefully. It doesn't look like a structure that looks realistic to me, so I would be cautious in thinking that that's actually a real feature.
But the difference is about plus 5 degrees Celsius, so that it is very large for some, if we consider it noise of the reference profile, that value is too large for.
So the contour interval here is it's like 1 degree. It's like one degree. So this is 4 and 5, and but there is a broad region of warming throughout this layer.
How about the diabatic heating from the thermal freezing? Isn't it close to the freezing level?
That's higher than the freezing level. In the eye, that could be close to it, but out here, the freezing level is probably around 5,
Yeah.
maybe
So
6.
It's too high for that.
Yeah. In the eye, in the center of the eye, the freezing level is probably close to 8 kilometers actually. But this feature is constant with height. I don't think it's related to the freezing. But yeah, I'm not saying like the whole warmth here is wrong. I'm just saying that this local maximum here right here doesn't seem particularly realistic to me. But I'm not sure. So this is another plot from the Durden 2013 study. So he looked at whether the height of the warm core maximum is related to the intensity of the storm. And so what's plotted here is the minimum sea level pressure for each of the cases. So this is 25 eye soundings from either dropsondes or radiosondes, and then compared to the level of the maximum temperature anomaly as a function of pressure. And then I believe that the black line is the best fit line to the data. So he found that and argued that there's some evidence that the height of the peak warming increases with intensity. So increasing intensity would be towards the right, and the increasing height would be upwards, so towards lower pressure. So there's some relationship here, perhaps, but there's a very large scatter here, so there's a lot of uncertainty and variability here. So I would say that we still don't really have, I don't think, like a definitive understanding of whether of what the relationship is in real storms between the height of the peak warming and the intensity of the storm. But perhaps there is a small relationship with that. It's something that this is different than what I found in my simulations where there was not a correlation. I know some other studies may have found that there is some correlation. So I think it's still something that isn't settled. But it isn't extremely correlated like some studies from maybe the 40 years ago suggested that you only get a high level warm core for strong storms. I will say the near tropopause maximum in the simulations, I think you do tend to see that in particular only when the storm gets strong enough. But like the sort of 200 millibar maximum versus 500 millibar maximum, I think there's a lot of variability, and it's hard to say if there's a real relationship with intensity or not. Just a few slides talking about my my Earl simulation.
So how many slides are in this chapter?
A few.
I think already.
You want me to?
Yeah, 1050.
Okay.
So maybe.
Oh, it's 1050.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I could. Sorry.
Don't worry. So,
I mean, would you like? I could. Yeah, I could. Well, we could take a break, or do you want me to skip the rest of this and move on to the last talk, or?
I want to hear. I want to hear your presentation. So,
Yes.
スキップはダメ。スキップはダメ絶対。
We have only 1 hour.
私の発表時間いいから私たちの発
Okay,
表時
so
間
somebody tell me to skip their presentation. So, okay. So now we have a break, short break, 10 minutes break, and continue to the same topic, part 2. And we kill the some presentation.
We have extra 2 hours.
We skip some of the
Yeah,
presentations in
we
the
have
afternoon.
extra
Oh, I don't want us to get in the way of other
yes.
people.
2 hours. So please talk about forcing about
Yes.
what you learned.
Anyway, let's have a break until どうしましょう10分ぐらい